In the heat of the night.
There aren't many films like In the Heat of the Night.
It stands up. It speaks for itself.
Seems like a cold sweat creeping across.
It has all the elements that a great film should have.
Yeah.
We knew we were making a film that had something to say.
Heat of the night.
It's very honest to the moment in which it was made.
I'm feeling motherless somehow.
It was a reflection of what was going on in America in 1967. There was a whole tide of social change happening.
Just you be strong, and it'll be all right.
The original book by John Ball dealt with a black detective on the Pasadena police force.
I read it, and I thought that it offered a great opportunity to have a film that would combine an exciting melodrama with a story that, at that particular time, was particularly relevant to what was going on in this country.
The Vietnam War was raging. Martin Luther King was still alive. There were riots in almost every major American city at that time. And the country was a big pot boiler.
We were in the middle of a civil rights revolution. And so tensions between whites and blacks, especially in the southern states, was running at a very high level.
All these people were moving towards a different world, and everyone was kind of nervous.
There's great hope in this moment, but there's also continued frustration at the slowness of the pace of social change.
Emancipation of slavery was just 100 years before that. We were like, we want everything right now in terms of what the Declaration of Independence is saying we're afforded as Americans, just the basic things of being able to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have all of this, and then Norman Jewison goes and makes this picture with Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger. For what it was a great contemporary story of the times of a man, Virgil Tibbs, who is going down into the South and basically seeing the way the South was at that time. It was a really volatile place.
Well, you're pretty sure of yourself, ain't you, Virgil? Virgil, that's a funny name for a nigger boy that comes from Philadelphia. What do they call you up there?
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Mr. Tibbs! Well, Mr. Wood, take Mr. Tibbs, take him down to the depot, and I mean boy like now.
Have the FBI lab send you the report on this. Not that it'll make any difference.
I'll take that.
Oh, you won't. I'm sending it in, personally.
He's a symbol of social change. He's this figure of authority. He enters with grace and dignity and incredible intelligence. And as he tries to solve this murder, you see that he's met with resistance at every moment for no reason other than his race.
He's more intelligent, he's more savvy. They need him to solve the crime. Over the course of the film, he and Steiger gain a sort of mutual respect for each other.
Most people look at this and they think of Poitier as being the only outsider, but in the film there's a couple of places where they make the point that Gillespie is an outsider. The town does not want him to be the sheriff. He isn't just a good old boy, one of the gang. They're as much against him as they are Virgil Tibbs in a way.
In this film, you always expect Gillespie to do the wrong thing because the prejudice that the audience has already, they've seen this guy in all of those various redneck sheriffs that they've seen on the newsreels and newscasts at that time. And then this guy actually does the right thing.
And you see him working through those issues over the course of the film. And so it really allows, I think, everyone to connect with one of the characters on a deep emotional level. And that's exactly what good film as social commentary can do.
What's made you change your mind about Tibbs?
Who says I have?
Last chief we had, He just shot Tibbs 1 second after he slapped Endicott. Claimed self-defense.
If it weren't for Walter Mirisch really going at this film idea, the system might not have taken In Heat of the Night.
I took it to United Artists and said, you know, we're ready to make this picture and we'd like you to approve the budget. And they, to their everlasting credit, agreed to go forward with the picture.
I tried to get George C. Scott, I thought would make a good Sheriff Gillespie, and I couldn't get him, so I called Rod Steiger.
Rod Steiger's career had been a very unusual one in that he really started as a character actor. I think In the Heat of the Night did bring out a different layer to his career, that you could see some subtleties to his performance.
Rod Steiger and the character that he's playing, Gillespie, he's the voice of those people who have lived a certain way for so long and are not used to encountering black people. He wants to do the right thing, you know, and at the same time, he doesn't actually know how to react to this whole thing of this lone wolf black man coming into his southern town and telling him how to do his job. And that's what makes for great cinema.
What about that big speech you gave me this morning? I didn't know you were going to slap any white man, least of all Endicott. All right, give me another day. 2 days, I'm close. I can pull that fat cat down. I can bring him right off this hill.
Oh, boy. Man, you're just like the rest of us. Ain't you?
In 1966 and 67, when they were making and releasing In the Heat of the Night, Sidney Poitier was really one of the biggest stars in the world.
He wins the Academy Award in '64, but his moment in the '60s is really, I mean, you can't compare anything to it, honestly, in terms of black actors ever.
Sidney Poitier represented a kind of black ideal, which is a man who maintains his intelligence and dignity as a human being, no matter how demeaning the situation.
And was probably the first major actor to be a crossover success with both white and black audiences.
Often in Hollywood, when you have a black star, the movie will violate basic rules of storytelling. Or it's like, well, shouldn't the guy kiss the girl? Ah, don't do that. Well, shouldn't he just whoop that guy's butt? No, you can't do that. Suddenly, the rules change. And that's not the case in this film. That Sidney Poitier is front and center, the star of the movie, and that's the end of the conversation.
All right, what do you have, Virgil?
I ain't serving him.
Tuesday night, you walked out of here at 2:40, right?
Right on the button.
2 minutes from now.
Sidney Poitier looked at me before we started shooting, and he says, I hear you want to go on location. And he says, I'm not going south of the Mason-Dixon line. Now, that's how dangerous it was in America if you were black and if you were well-known. As a result, I found a location in southern Illinois, a town called Sparta.
Sparta, Illinois, although not Mississippi, is the South temperamentally. And southern Illinois, even today, has many aspects of the Old South.
Originally, I think in the script it said Wells, Mississippi. I'll never forget the production designer looking at me and saying, what are we going to do about the water tower? I said, well, change the name in the script to Sparta, Mississippi. What does it matter? Everywhere we look, we see Sparta. So we just changed Sterling's title for the town.
We did shoot one scene in the South, the cotton scene.
And I'd found a place outside of a place called Dyersburg, Tennessee, which had a lot of cotton fields where they still pick cotton by hand. And so I went to Sydney and I said, I know I promised you I wouldn't go south of the Mason-Dixon line, but I've got to have this shot of you and Rod driving through this cotton field, Sidney, being a professional actor he is, said, okay, we found a Holiday Inn. It was the only place we could find that would accept multiracial residents.
We were aware of Sidney's apprehensions, so we just wanted to shoot and get out.
About 2 nights later, there was a pickup truck started going around the parking lot, honking their horns. They started to bang on doors, and they were banging on the door, some guy looking for his wife.
A drunk Southerner looking for his wife and finding a black man. In those days, it would have been trouble.
I called Sidney, who was next door to me, and I said, Sidney, it's okay, don't worry about it. We'll take care of this. Just don't go to the door. And he said, go to the door? He said, the first person through that door I'm gonna blow away. And he had a gun under his pillow.
It wasn't one of those things where just like, oh, Hollywood comes to town and they're welcome with open arms. It was one of those things where like, you know, get them cameras out of here.
Across the United States, there were still large sectors of the population that were very resistant to the kind of messages that you get in this film.
This was a year before Martin Luther King was killed, so the racial tensions in the South were significant, and so it really took some courage to do that, both on Poitier's part and also on the filmmakers, to put him in an environment where he might potentially come to harm.
Okay, black boy. We come here to teach you some manners. Now, we told you about them bad manners, boy. You better put that down.
Why don't you come and get it, baby?
The budget, as I recall it, was somewhere between $2 million and $2.1 million.
Which meant I couldn't afford a crane, I couldn't afford this, I couldn't afford that. But I had Haskell Wexler, who was a brilliant, brilliant cameraman.
I did a number of things to facilitate matters which were not common in the film at that time. For example, the cars, headlights. Those headlights were airplane landing lights. If you had regular car headlights, they wouldn't show. Over the police chief's station, I stretched a silk and then had one strong light hit down into the silk. That was done actually in silent film days. In silent films, the sets used to be outside. They would put a silk over the top, and that way it would be illuminated. Everywhere you have to light, and that requires time and skill and big equipment. That's one of the reasons I brought this little camera, because when you got away from the big heavy equipment, then you can, as Norman said, do more improvisation.
You know, we were loose and we were improvising. And Haskell and I would dream up shots. But I remember strapping the camera to a couple of 2x4s because I wanted the point of view of the hounds that were following a fugitive through the woods.
I got a little bicycle wheel and with a little bracket on it and a stick. And then I ran the camera through the grass behind the hounds.
And I used the zoom a lot.
So there was where we pan over to the bridge and then we zoom in. And at that time, of course, for a move to be that way was unusual, because a move like that usually had to be made with a crane.
I came from live television originally, and so I was quite used to using the zoom in a musical form. In other words, the zoom moves at the same tempo as the music, so I would sing to the focus puller. And he would move the lens in the rhythm so that it took exactly 4 bars, or 6, or whatever, to make the move. And then Quincy Jones could pick up the same rhythm.
And that was like magic, you know. A score, it paints the psyche of the audience, you know. I mean, you can make the audience do anything with that, with music, man.
In the Heat of the Night was in fact a groundbreaking score.
It gives you a southern flavor, a jazz flavor, and there's a lot of jazz really in the score that really adds another texture to the film.
Prior to 1967, no score for an American film had been based so much in authentic Southern blues. Even movies that were set in the South for decades earlier tended to have a traditional symphonic score, the kind of thing that you would hear in almost any movie of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. That's because the composers that preceded Quincy here were kind of locked into a 19th century romantic sensibility.
It's a revolution, because it's against the whole classical foundation that Eastern European musicians had.
You do see a coming away from the old studio sound system. This is a great representation of this new way of scoring films in which you don't have a huge orchestra back in a studio.
When In the Heat of the Night came along, and Quincy brought this far more authentic blues sound, it felt real and it felt honest in a way that no movie set in that place, I think, had ever really sounded.
When I screened this film the first time was in, I think, San Francisco.
The audience laughed.
And I was just totally shocked. And I thought, oh my God, what do they think? I'm making a comedy?
Norman felt, I guess I must have felt that way, that we were making a serious statement about civil rights.
Well, I was very discouraged. I walked the streets after the screening, so discouraged because I didn't think the film really had the impact with the audience I was hoping.
I thought it was fantastic, and I thought it was going to win the Academy Award as the best picture of the year.
It won a lot of critical acclaim and received great acclaim at the Academy, and ended up winning Best Picture.
The competition that year was just extraordinary. We were pitted against Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate. Another picture was Sydney, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. It was exceedingly difficult horse race to win.
They're all wonderful pictures, but you can see why people at the time would have chosen In the Heat of the Night, because it really grabs your soul.
And Rod Steiger won the Academy Award as the best actor of the year.
In the meanwhile, you just killed yourself a white man, just about the most important white man we got around here, and picked yourself up $200.
I earned that money 10 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Colored can't earn that kind of money, boy. Hell, that's more than I make in a month. Now, where did you earn it?
Philadelphia.
Mississippi?
Pennsylvania.
Not just what you do up there in little old Pennsylvania, earn that kind of money.
I'm a police officer.
There is no doubt in my mind that Sidney Poitier gave one of the great performances of his career. The sad, ironic capper, I think, to the whole thing is that the Academy Award had to be postponed for 2 days because of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. So here you have a man who represented the hopes of America assassinated at the same moment that In the Heat of the Night is being acclaimed as a film that's got something to say about racism in America.
This town needs a factory, Virgil. Corbett come down from Chicago to build it. I hear they're gonna hire 1,000 men. Half of them be colored. You know what that means?
Probably got him killed.
That's what Mrs. Corbett thinks. She wants us to catch her killer.
As an African American who works in Hollywood, I always give Norman Jewison a whole lot of respect, because we always say amongst ourselves that, you know, whenever a white director takes a film on a black subject, 9 times out of 10 he's going to ruin it. There's no cultural identification to what's exactly that story is. And Norman, as far as I'm concerned, he's 3 for 3. He did Hurricane, he did Soldier Story, and In the Heat of the Night.
I do think that this film is a very special, it has a very special place in American cinema.
In the heat of of the night.
I'm pleased, and in one way or another, it can remind people of our history, which is often obscured.
This picture has a lot of heart in it and a lot of passion.
I think it's over time, though, that people come to really appreciate the significance of a film like In the Heat of the Night.
It has this sort of sense of important historical record, and I think can really bring those kinds of things to life in a way that's different from the news footage we often see of that era.
And I think it still speaks to people about what's right and what's wrong, and how we should treat one another.
You be strong, and it'll be all